Wassail, welcome to Rune Revival, where you'll learn how to write today's English in runes. I'm the Rune Man. Today we'll be looking at the relationship between runes and IPA for Northern Irish pronunciations. Here's an example of such an accent.
The letter without a comma said a lot about the price of fjord dilution. But what sort of pen would burn? Yes, the new box dress kit includes choice cloth and yarn made from the azure fleece of a thin goat. I see the arm length of the bird donor is off by about half an inch. We have to start near North Square train station on the map in 1 hour, then quickly strut to Rodeo Loch. Don't gut huge purple fish by force, or trap a fat white goose in the jeep until dinner, because our car vehicle tax is due. Now pause and pass the date cake. My father-in-law is not a cute boy, though he's no bad lad in tour. He threw a mare one day in flight when his putt on the golf course put the ball underwater. If your pure soul tore your hood, you'd run to tow a deer in bed through Earth City like a winner too. When a cheap ham bit your thigh with its mouth, the happy nurse thought the cure to thy left foot cut was to sap a neon thing from your face. Zap. Her delusion pit a tin yacht in a full bath against a palm in a vat run by me.
By the way, our website is now live, albeit incomplete. Feel free to check it out and let us know what you'd like to see added. Now, as you may have noticed, Northern Irish English is generally rhotic, though some vowels only are coloured. Before discussing vowels more broadly, let's cover a few consonants. In spite of stereotypes to the contrary, this speaker has no problems with dental fricatives.
Bit your thigh with its mouth, the happy nurse thought the cure to thy left foot. My father-in-law is not a cute boy. Choice cloth.
But listen to this.
Then quickly strut to Rodeo Loch.
What sound do you hear at the end of the word loch? Now, which rune represents that sound? As you may have guessed, it's the rune ich, also called io. Compare that with the British RP.
Then quickly strut to Rodeo Loch.
Can you hear the difference? If so, which spelling on screen represents which accent? Leave your answers below. On a minor note, Northern Irish may also use the hard form of h at times. Were you able to detect that in the audio at all? For our purposes, that doesn't really matter because the rune hail still covers that sound anyway. Now for vowels. In the traditional Ulster accent, the FLEECE vowel was a sliding vowel, but now it's shifted to the monophthong used throughout the rest of Ireland. Compare these examples.
And yarn made from the azure fleece.
Made from the azure fleece of a thin goat.
From the azure fleece of a thin goat.
In this accent, the near vowel is merely the rhotic form of the FLEECE vowel. However, it should be written as rad for clarity's sake, unless you're really wanting to emphasize this accent. While we're on this sound, in spite of what I said about the fleeing digraph in the previous video on RP, we've decided to reverse its order. As one of our viewers pointed out, if the rune io is meant to represent a sound that shifts from the vowel is to the consonant ye, then it is the first sound in fleeing which changes, not the second. The kit vowel is positioned relatively close to its RP equivalent in the Belfast and Mid-Ulster accents. This represents a frontal shift from the traditional Ulster accent, wherein the kit vowel was identical to the comma vowel. Meanwhile, Ulster Scots has the pin-pen merger, where the kit vowel has merged into the dress vowel. Thus, the kit vowel has ceased to exist in Ulster Scots. Contrary to this, across Northern Ireland the happy vowel is fully fronted. Consequently, Even in those dialects where the kit vowel has merged into some other vowel, the alternate form of is still exists, only its anchor word has shifted to the final vowel in happy instead. Next up we have the comma vowel, which is the schwa, represented by Ethel in runes. In Northern Ireland, its R-coloured form can always be heard at the end of letter, which should be written with the ⚱ digraph. Simultaneously, we're going to look at the dress vowel because in this audio, it's a sliding vowel.
Dress.
The realization you just heard is most common in the Belfast accent. At this point, Northern Irish speakers need to answer two questions. 1. Does your nurse vowel sound the same as your square vowel? 2. If yes, do they sound more like the dress vowel or the same as the letter vowel? That will determine whether you have the square nurse merger or the nurse square merger. If the vowel in square sounds the same as the vowel in letter, then your accent has eliminated the square vowel. Consequently, you never need use the rad bind rune. Conversely, if the vowel in nurse sounds the same as the vowel in square, but that's different from the vowel in letter, then you have a similar scenario to what we saw before with kit and happy. As for the face vowel, can you hear the difference between it and both the kit and happy vowels? If no, then you have a merger and thus the dual form of does not exist for you. If you can distinguish them, then use the usual io digraph for that vowel. As for the rune its alternate form does not exist in Northern Ireland because the foot vowel is identical to the goose vowel. Let's listen.
Thy left foot, goose.
Now, I don't know about you, but I can hear a slight difference between those. So maybe, in spite of what the theory says, the split may have begun. Regardless, whereas its main form is the rounded close central vowel, its rhotic form is the rhoticized rounded close back vowel.
Cured.
Note how, unlike in my accent, the schwa is here totally absent in the word cure. This is the kind of reason why the Touchstone uses rad as the representative digraph for this lexical set. It's both concise and recognizable to a wide range of speakers. At this point, we're going to skip down to the corner where we find the thought vowel, which is the rounded open back vowel. As usual, it's the anchor word for the main form of the rune ors. But here's where things become complicated. Our speaker in the audio uses the first vowel in father in bath and a more fronted vowel in trap. However, not all Northern Irish speakers do that. If you do distinguish the vowels in trap and father, then use ash for trap and ark for father, as usual. If you use the same vowel for both, ask yourself whether it sounds like the vowel in start without the It's more likely that they sound different. In that case, to differentiate them, use ash for words that use the trap vowel, but ark for words that use the start vowel. If the start vowel does sound like the trap vowel, then most English speakers would say that you only use ark, never ash. To their ears, your accent has completely eliminated the sounds of ash. But remember, your goal should be to write so that others can clearly understand you. Consequently, If all these vowels, including the start vowel, sound like the trap vowel, then you may be better off writing them all with ash rather than arc. Can you see why? Before we go on, deep dive videos like this take a long time to make, so if you want to see more videos analyzing other accents, please share this video with your networks on all platforms and leave a comment telling us which accent on screen now you want analyzed next. Next we have the strut vowel. Many of you may recognize the symbol on the right for it. Its centralized rounded form is only found in Northern Ireland. As usual, it's the alternate form of arc. At this point, if you're a Northern Irish speaker who is currently not using ash at all, then it may be worth considering whether using arc for the strut vowel but ash for all of the open vowels except thought vowel could be worth your while. That way you'd have some use for ash, and the doubling of consonants only after arc in your accent would give you a secondary means for distinguishing these sound sets. For many speakers of this accent, the lot vowel falls within another set. If that's not you, then lot remains the anchor word for the alternate form of ors. The goat vowel is a long monophthong and its rhotic form is the force vowel. However, whereas they use the rounded close mid back vowel, the rounded open mid back vowel is instead used for the north vowel. Consequently, retaining that distinction in the touchstone is important for Northern Irish speakers. North uses the ors rad bind rune or digraph, goat uses ors ur, and force ors ur rad. To aid clarity, I'd recommend writing ors ur as a bind rune where possible, with the first rune mirrored. The choice vowel starts in the position of the north vowel and slides towards the kit vowel, so its usual digraph should make sense. Some Northern Irish speakers have the my flight split in the price set, where the diphthong in my is more open than that in flight. However, they are still comparatively similar to each other. Both begin within the proper domain of arc. Although the close mid front vowel falls within the proper domain of in Northern Irish accents the front vowels tend to be more open anyway, so the fact that that sound is the happy vowel rather than the dress vowel there shouldn't be too surprising. This is a case of is breaking out of its proper domain slightly. Finally, the mouth vowel is something close to what it was historically, only sliding up the chart instead of across. As it has its own rune anyway, there's not much to talk about here other than the word hour. We don't have theoretical data on that, but I'd say it sounds like the R-coloured form of the mouth vowel. What do you think?
With its mouth, but 1 hour.
In conclusion, for those of you familiar with IPA, some of the details we've given in this video about how to write runes may feel incorrect, but feelings can be deceptive. In order for written communication to be understood and therefore effective, it is more important to write what you expect the reader to hear rather than precisely what your mouth articulates. However, if you say two sounds identically, then it is unreasonable to expect you to distinguish them. The spelling advice we give is intended to help you, as a writer, describe the sounds you make in the clearest possible way without that being excessively hard for you. But if your reader can't interpret your runes, then what's the point of writing at all? At the same time, while we can all critique one another's spellings based upon our own accents, we should be careful not to judge one another's spelling choices too harshly. More on that in the upcoming Q&A video. Thanks for watching.